Simone Lim-Hing is an assistant research professor in the Department of Forestry and Environmental Resources at NC State University and a cooperator with the U.S. Forest Service. Simone, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me.
So, to start, could you tell the audience a little bit about your research?
Yeah, so I look at forest health in all different scales. My background is forest pathology, so looking at how plants defend themselves, specifically trees, how they defend themselves against diseases and pests. And then I look at that interaction between diseases and trees at different scales. So the individual tree level to maybe a stand, a couple of acres, and then all the way up to the regional level. So how is disease interacting with the trees on a state by state level or a regional level? Can we predict where the disease is going? Um, and now as a cooperator for the U.S. Forest Service, I look at forest health trends throughout the U.S. So um, what are we seeing in terms of mortality or maybe crown loss, like if trees are not doing so hot, um, and vice versa. So we're just kind of looking at patterns in forest health that maybe we can point other folks in the direction to say, hey, maybe we should manage for this, or we should keep out an eye for, a mortality hotspot, something like that. So.
And what kind of trends are you seeing across the country? Are there areas of more healthy forests and less healthy forests that you're seeing?
I wish I could say yes. Um, but there is a whole lot of mortality that we're seeing, a lot of it due to extensive drought, extensive heat. Right now we're in a heat wave, and that is probably not doing any good for the trees. Um, but there is some optimism, I would say. There are some maybe not that they're doing healthier, but we're seeing some forests that are pretty resilient to disturbance like climate change or um, pest outbreaks and stuff like that. So for the most part, we try to shy away from negative or positive terms. We just want to see patterns that we can look for. But the forests of the US are so diverse that it's not just one singular trend. But for the most part, we are seeing, the effects of disturbance and climate change and land use change is not doing any good for a lot of the forests.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges associated with conducting the research that you do?
So I would say specifically for my current research is data. Data is the really good thing about this job because there is so much data that we have, but it is also a bad thing about this job because there's so much data um, that you kind of need to know how to approach a question. Um, so one of the beauties of the Forest Service is the FIA, the Forest Inventory and Analysis database. That is basically this no, worldwide, nationwide survey of plots, these established plots throughout forests in the US. And they're annualized. FIA surveyors go back every 5 to 10 years to take measurements of these trees, assess the health. So we have so much data for decades of these trees. And that's kind of what we use for modeling these trends and looking at these forest health trends throughout the US. But at the same time, there's a lot of variation in that. So we need to make sure that we're using the right statistical models. We're asking, biologically relevant questions. That is something that is definitely a hurdle. And I'm sure a hurdle for every life sciences person is making sure that your data is being utilized in the proper way because you can very easily lie with statistics.
So just pulling on that thread a little bit more about data, how do you collect data and what types of technology do you use to collect data?
So in this position, I don't go out in the field, which I'm kind of grateful for. I've done my duty in as a PhD grad student doing all my field work, but we rely heavily on the Forest Service and our state cooperators to go out and collect these data. But we also do collaborate with other folks who have permanent plots or they have these different networks. We also use a lot of remote sensing data, so data from different sensors on satellites, either US based or European based. So a lot of the data that I use is open source. So anyone can go in and look at this data, which is also something that I really like about this position is that um, anyone can, go in and validate what I'm doing. So that's definitely a plus. I would say one challenge with disease, which is what I'm interested, forest disease, is there's not a whole lot of molecular based data. So the issue with diseases and I'm sure in other organisms in the forest too, you kind of need to validate it. You can't just look at a tree and say that probably is this disease. You need to verify it by DNA, and that's of course costly. You need training. So that's one hurdle that we're facing when we want to predict where disease is going is validation, and we don't really have that yet.
So is that an additional layer of data collection that the Forest Service does, or is that something that you would have to go out and follow up on if you were to kind of get a lead that there might be
Hmm.
something that you're looking for in one of these plots?
Yeah, so the Forest Service, specifically with the FIA, they don't go out and molecularly confirm anything, but they will say, suspected this, or they'll describe the symptoms, and you can kind of extrapolate maybe what the disease is, but you can't say for sure. So if I would want to, look at something like a new epidemic happening in the forest, like brown spot needle blight, that's kind of big over here right now. I would need to, either go out or have some folks go out.
So you also mentioned earlier when we were talking about spectroscopy. Could you talk about how you use that and what that is?
Yeah, so spectroscopy, specifically what I do is vibrational spectroscopy. It's um it's a tool that we use. It basically you can shine a light onto a sample, and then the data that you get back is a very specific spectra. And that spectra is so unique, we often call it a fingerprint, a chemical fingerprint. And this technology is often used in food science to see if, coffee is adulterated with something, if it's not pure. Um, but forest researchers have been using it recently and found that it's a really good way to either find if a tree is resistant or if it is infected with something. So we've been using this technology in the field, scanning trees, um, using algorithms and models to be able to delineate, okay, this fingerprint looks like it is associated with resistance, and this one is with susceptibility to a specific disease. And we've been able to use that in the field to actually get those results. So my dissertation, I worked with a couple industries, timber industries, and they were very interested in this. And it was successful. So we were able to delineate um, resistance in loblolly pine trees to see if they were resistant or susceptible to fusiform rust, which is a really important disease in the industry.
So, with regards to the industry, do they also get involved in some of this research to with their managed forests or the forests that they work in to make sure that all of the trees that they're working with are healthy?
Yeah, so the FIA data that I mentioned, that goes into both forests, federal, state, and private land. So, of course, they don't give out the coordinates of, private land, but, um, everyone is kind of invested in the health of trees because even if it is your own land, things spread or, you want to see how they're doing. So, in my dissertation work, especially, I had cooperators from timber industry, from government, from private landowners. So everyone is invested in this, so people do give us, there's a lot of training of resources and data and stuff. So everyone is quite involved in the process.
Nice. Well, I also wanted to go back to the conversation about data. Um, are you using AI and machine learning more, or is the industry or research institutions using that more for this type of research? Do you see that being applied more and more now?
Yeah, definitely machine learning. I've used machine learning in a couple of projects. I might be the odd man out, and I'm not really a fan of AI. I think it can be very powerful and useful, and I know that a lot of industry is using it, especially for identifying gaps in either research or maybe potential projects. Um, and there definitely is, use for it here. I haven't personally used it yet, but there definitely is a push for it. It's definitely something that I see in conferences or papers to either supplement or kind of drive a project moving forward. But I do think machine learning is being used more and more in modeling for forest health for sure.
And what does that look like? Is it modeling the growth or the growth of a disease or how it would impact the health of a particular species of tree? What does the application of machine learning look like?
So in my experience, a lot of the machine learning that we use is to predict where something is going, not necessarily um, a disease, well, a disease, yes, but kind of like what are the trends we're seeing now and what would that look like in the future, which is very helpful, especially in climate modeling or modeling this interaction between a tree and a disease or a pest. If we're seeing it here now and these interactions happen in a couple years, given the environment, given whatever we know, um, what would that um, what would that end up looking like in 50 years? And how can we inform people in the future or inform people now to help us in the future? So it's a lot of prediction, which is very, very, very helpful. Um, and then yeah, I would say it's mostly prediction. But another one is when you're looking at a forest, especially in a large region like the US, you have so many interacting variables. You have climate, you have these different trees, you have different data sources. So machine learning definitely helps with parsing out all of these interactions and kind of making it more interpretable for scientists and then also, the people who are boots on the ground making these decisions.
Yeah. Well, thinking about the future, what do you think the future of this research is, and do you see any breakthroughs on the horizon?
I'm hoping that we will have more data. So I know I talk a lot about data, but that's, my expertise. But um, I think there's a big push for data availability and data user-friendly interfaces. So that's something that we've been working on and we've been discussing a lot here is there is so much data and there is so much out there that we want not only it to be available to, scientists and my colleagues, but people like my mom can go onto an interface and see, okay, this is the forest near me. What are what's going on? Is there a threat? Is there something that I should be looking out for? Or even just, curiosity. You want to see what's going on? What are some interesting facts about the forest near you? So I think that's something that's been in the works a lot, given funding cuts recently. I'm not sure, what the future of that is. But I think that a lot of the data breakthroughs, or sorry, the scientific breakthroughs hinge on that is, the making things a little bit more um, transparent for the rest of the taxpayers. Um, I also think that we are getting a lot more precise in our predictions and our analyses as modeling improves, as technology improves and becomes more accessible. There's a lot of questions that we can answer now that maybe we couldn't before or couldn't afford to before.
Awesome. Well, Simone, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and your research, and I hope we can continue the conversation down the road.
Cool. Thank you for having me.